Hello, and welcome to Cy's Top 5 Crabs That Are Not Actually Crabs. I'm Cy, I'm your presenter, and I will present my top 5 picks for the crabs that are not actually crabs. Before we get into my top 5, let us establish what is a crab. True crabs are a member of the order Brachyura, and they have a very specific body plan. They have a short tail that is tucked beneath their body, it is hidden beneath the crab, and then they have this very low squat body which kind of lays low to the ground and is very flat. The legs are all spread out and stuff. They have thick exoskeletons, which is made of chitin that will protect their innards. It is hard, and it protects their soft insides. They have one pair of claws, and then they have 6 to 8 legs, depending on the species. All crabs have gills, even land crabs have gills, which they will need to keep wet to keep breathing. All crabs start their lives as larvae in the ocean or in fresh water, and then they migrate to land if they are land crabs, or they stay in the ocean if they're not. You will see that this is also true for a lot of non-crabs, because a lot of the non-crabs I have chosen are kind of cousin species, like kind of related to real crabs. Anyways, now I'll get into the top 5. All the crabs I've chosen because they have the word crab in their name, thus implying that they are crabs. They're not. And then I've kind of ranked them from least crab-like to most crab-like. And let's get into it. At number 5, we have the humble horseshoe crab. This thing isn't even trying to be a crab. It's doing its own thing. It looks like a fucking horseshoe. What more could you want? They're actually more closely related to spiders than anything else. So this is an arachnid. Very cool. They are the last living member of the Cyphosaura order, and there are 5 living species of horseshoe crabs left. They can be found in Southeast Asia and some parts of the US and Mexico. They have not changed their look at all for 220 million years. We have fossils from the Jurassic period that look exactly like they do today. So that is very cool. It is often referred to as a living fossil. They are edible, and they are a delicacy in some parts of the world, and something very cool about them is their blood can be used medically, and not just for traditional medicine. They have scientific medical usage where their blood has something called an amoebocyte, which is kind of like a white blood cell that protects the system. From this amoebocyte, we can create something called limulus amoebocyte lysate, and we can use this to test for diseases such as E. coli and salmonella. And due to this, we are harvesting them in mass to kind of bleed them dry. However, unfortunately, we don't really know what this process does to their spawning rates, and we don't really have good data on the mortality rate of this process, and we aren't really sure that everywhere they do this, they actually release them into the wild. Some places have been found to just sell them as bait, which is they're often commonly used as well. So because of all these factors, horseshoe crabs are unfortunately an endangered species. They're also heavily impacted by the fact that our shores are just getting worse and worse. They're getting more and more polluted. So it is very unfortunate that we are kind of losing this amazing fossil species. We have to support initiatives to keep them alive, and therefore I have linked 2 initiatives that I found in the description below that you can go check out, namely Wetland Institute and WWF Hong Kong. Moving right along to number 4, hermit crabs. They don't look like crabs at all either. They don't have the body plan of a crab. They are kind of weird looking. They don't have hard shells, all over at least. And their body is not flat. Not very squat, not at all. However, hermit crabs are very cool, and they're a very varied group of non-crabs. They have the Diogenae, which has a larger left claw, and then they have terrestrial hermit crabs and aquatic hermit crabs. Like crabs, all hermit crabs start their lives in the larvae stage in the ocean, and then terrestrial hermit crabs will, as they grow up, migrate to the surface, where they will live the rest of their lives. Aquatic hermit crabs, however, stay in water their entire lives, and some are even found to kind of host anemones on their shell. For the anemone, it's very cool because it can move around and then has a larger radius of eating, and also are less susceptible to predators, while the hermit crab thinks it's very cool because anemones are often poisonous and wards away predators. So it's a win-win, a symbiotic relationship, as they call it. Inside their shell, they are soft and squishy, and their entire abdomen is kind of contorted into this weird spiral because they are very adapted to living inside snail shells due to the fact that they do use shells and hard cavities for protection, these little guys are very vulnerable to beach pollution, as they will often either incorrectly identify trash as a suitable shell, or they will be forced to use trash if the snail species that they're relying upon is dying out or thinning out. So they might choose inhospitable shells, such as plastic or glass bottles, tin cans, and other debris, and this often kills the hermit crab in the end, because especially plastic is very slippery, so they can't get out of the shell when they grow out of it, so they kind of die inside. And a dead hermit crab is kind of a big old smoke signal for other hermit crabs to be like, hey, come, there's a free house over here because I just died. And then other hermit crabs will dig out the dead hermit crab and then go into their shell, and then the cycle kind of repeats, killing more and more hermit crabs. Many hermit crab species can live for several decades, and some are kept as pets, especially the small terrestrial species of hermit crabs are kept as pets. However, the hermit crabs generally don't do that well in captivity, either because of bad living conditions, poor care. Hermit crabs are a very demanding pet. They require a lot of setup, they require a lot of space. They require a really big terrarium, a lot of sand. Don't get one unless you're absolutely certain you can house one. And please be sure to, before you get any pet, crab or not, do your proper research, because these guys live a fraction of what they can in a captivity, sometimes all the way down to max 1 year because of poor care. They are very fragile. They are not as hardy as most other pet crab species, so please take care of these guys. Our next contestant, or next on the list really, for most crab is number 3, the coconut crab. This guy looks a lot more like a crab. It is a hermit crab. It's a giant terrestrial hermit crab, but it's kind of just ditched its shell, which makes it look more like a crab. A fun little tidbit that also got a little further up on the list is that there's a theory that was somewhat widely held that they caused the disappearance of Amelia Earhart. The story went that Amelia crashed near an island where these guys lived, and then these guys just kind of ate her and left nothing behind. And this is supported by the fact that these have eaten humans before. There have been cases where these eat corpses, and luckily they don't eat live humans. They can grow as large as 1 meter wide and as heavy as 4.1 kilos. And that nets them 2 records, namely largest living terrestrial arthropod and largest living terrestrial invertebrate. When they are small, they use shells for protection, and as other hermit crabs, they start their life in a larva stage, and then they grow up and become terrestrial. And these guys, very uniquely, get lungs. They have lungs that they use to breathe with once they become adults, which means that they gain the ability to drown because their gills become kind of vestigial. So they will drown if they are placed in water as adults. They get their name from their diet. They eat coconuts. They will either break open coconuts with their enormous claws, or they will drop them from trees to break them up. They will also drop themselves from trees because it requires a lot of energy to get down from trees. They are not fast. They will just kind of drop because they can handle quite high fall. So that's pretty interesting. Their habitats are threatened, much like a lot of these other non-crabs and also crabs. They're currently not endangered, fortunately, but I would love if these guys were kept around, because I really badly want to see one in real life, because they just seem so alien to me and I want to meet one. Next up, number 2, porcelain crabs. This one looks like a real crab, so it is in the number 2 spot. The number 1 spot may surprise you. They're very crab-like. They're actually related to hermit crabs, a part of the Anomora group. They look very cool, but you can kind of already see that beneath the claw there on the picture I chose, that there is a tail there that's not entirely short and it's not tucked all the way in. They are actually related to squat lobsters. Squat lobsters aren't lobsters either. They are also non-crabs. And they share very similar build. They are very small, around 15 millimeters wide, and they primarily live among shore rocks. So again, protect your shores. And if you do happen to pick up any rocks along the shore, or you turn them over, please put them back, because by doing that, you are destroying their natural habitat, and these guys live everywhere, except the Arctic and the Atlantic Ocean, so chances are you probably have some on your local beaches. I have found them myself when I've been to the beach, and please don't stress them out, because they shed limbs when they try to escape predators, while most non-crab and all crab limbs do grow back when they molt. It does take a while, it takes a lot of energy, so take care of them. They're really cute and they're really weird. At the number 1 spot, we have king crabs. King crabs are not crabs, people. We aren't sure what they are. The popular theory is that they're related to hermit crabs, but we really aren't sure what these things are, but we know they're not crabs. But they get a lot of points for the ironic name, because, you know, king of all crabs, not even a crab. There are around 40 known species of king crabs. There are 3 really popular ones, which are popular because we eat them a lot, namely the Alaskan king crab, or the red king crab, the blue king crab, and the yellow king crab. The Alaskan king crab is the biggest king crab, and it has a leg span of 1.8 meters and weighs around 12.7 kilos. It can also live up to 30 years. King crabs are commonly found in very deep water, and they migrate to shallow water to mate. And they can migrate very far. They can migrate up to 1 mile per day, and some have even migrated 100 miles round trip from the shallows back to the deep water. They are really amazing giants, but they are unfortunately victims of overfishing. Their population has been in a steady decline for a long time now, and initially we believed that it was overfishing, but newer theory suggests that they are in a population decline despite limits on fishing because of climate change. The water is heating up, and the conditions they live under are just being disturbed. So we are seeing them go away, and there's not really much we could do about it. So that is very unfortunate. So again, protect your oceans, protect your shorelines, protect everything. I want these things to live. But yeah, that is it for my presentation on non-crabs. Now I'm gonna go over 3 true crabs that I think are very cool. First one, fiddler crabs. I love fiddler crabs. They're so fucking cute. I want 10. They share a family with ghost crabs and mangrove crabs, but fiddler crabs specifically have this very unique enormous claw, one enormous claw, and they have very long eye stalks. The big claw is used for thermoregulation and fighting in competition, and something very cool about them is that they can change color. While a lot of crabs do change color somewhat as they molt and grow, these guys can change color rapidly, like squid or octopuses. I will link a video in the description so you can see this for yourself, because when I saw it, I was completely flabbergasted and I thought, no, crabs can't do this. That is something only squid and octopuses can do. So I really recommend going and watching that. They do very well in captivity and they can be kept as a pet, and I did really want one as a pet, but I did go with something else in the end, namely vampire crabs. I have owned 3 of these. They are pictured. They were different species of vampire crabs. Do not get different species of vampire crabs in the same terrarium. Please be mindful of the species you get. I was kind of dumb. The pet store I got them from was even dumber. I had to kind of like order them specifically for me, which meant that I could not reject them once they got them in. So I just kind of had to accept that I got 3 different species of them. And unfortunately, I did eventually lose one to infighting, because if they are not the same color, they will kill each other. These crabs are racist. But yeah, they are very cute. They're very cool pet animals. They are quite active as well, so they are fun to watch. Luckily, my terrarium was kind of big enough to support the 3 of them, until in the end when I had to move and I had to pack them into a little box together. I shouldn't have done that. That was on me, which meant that one of them did get attacked and was severely injured, and he died later. But I love them. They're really cool. I don't have them anymore. I really want some again eventually once I get the space for it. But they grow between 3 and 5 centimeters. They have 8 long, skinny legs. They come in a large variety of color, which is actually just subspecies. And they are most recognizable by the fact that most of them have these kind of purple claws, purple translucent claws. Some of them do have white claws, as you can see in the bottom right there, where I have one white clawed one. They need water to keep their gills wet, but they are primarily terrestrial. And while on the ground, they will dig caves to hide food in. They are a very fine crab to keep as a pet. They do very well in captivity. That was it. Now we go on to sleepy crabs, or sponge crabs. They grow around 20 centimeters wide. They live with a depth of 50 meters and often inside caves. And something really cool about them is that they have a symbiotic relationship with sea sponges. They will carry one around on their back for camouflage, which both protects them from bigger predators, and it protects the sponge from smaller things that might eat it, and also lets the sponge filter feed on a larger area. These crabs are extremely possessive over their sponge and will even get aggressive if someone threatens the sponge. And a really neat thing about them is that if you take the sponge from them and you place that sponge amongst a lot of other suitable sponges, this crab will recognize its original sponge and pick that out amongst the crowd to carry again, which is so cute that it forms a little relationship with an individual sponge. This crab has 6 legs, but it actually only uses 2 of them to move because the last 2 have kind of contorted backwards into kind of like a sponge holding machine. So they just have 2 sponge holding legs. Anyways, that was it for me. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Thank you for listening to a dumb little stupid cat present her little thoughts on crabs. Remember that I am not an expert on this topic. I'm not a biologist. I'm not a crab biologist. I'm not a marine biologist. I'm not an evolutionary crab biologist. I don't just know things about crabs. I like crabs. I like non-crabs. I think they are awesome. So take everything with a grain of salt. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I will try to respond to them. Otherwise, someone smarter than me might see it and be able to respond to you. Remember to check out the organizations and help the horseshoe crab. We don't want it to die. Otherwise, have a good day. Check me out on Bluesky if you want more stuff like this. Like, subscribe, do the things, tickle the algorithm. Have a super good day or night or morning or whatever it is for you. And bye.